and we will jump in to introduce our guests. We have an esteemed panel today, Jeff Moore, Fintan Mc Kiernan, and Andy Carluccio. Let's bring those guys up, and let's start the show by allowing each of you to just introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do, and how you became involved in the NDI Advisory Board. We can start with, we'll start in the upper left-hand corner with Fintan. Sorry.
Hi, no problem. Good morning. My name is Fintan Mc Kiernan. I'm with Ideal Systems here in Singapore, and we've been now working with NDI in our solutions across Asia and across Southeast Asia for a number of years. Ideal is a systems integrator that is on both sides. We're in the broadcast systems integration business, and we're in the ProAV systems integration business. So NDI is like a really kind of a core technology for us, because it's one of the probably the biggest Venn diagram segment overlaps between broadcast and AV. So we do a lot with NDI in broadcast, and we do a lot with NDI in AV. We've deployed a wide variety of projects with NDI over the last 5-6 years, which has given us a wealth of experience. And we know what works well, and we know what works less well. So lots of experience, and we are still really driving it hard. That's really what, I suppose we've been pushing out a lot of new successes and doing new things with NDI, and I guess that's probably how I ended up in the advisory council of NDI, because we pushed the envelope.
Awesome. Andy, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Wonderful. I'm Andy Carluccio, and I lead our client innovation team here at Zoom. I oversee all pro media and broadcast applications of Zoom technology, where NDI plays in a huge story on our side. Not only for remote contribution use cases like where we have today with remote guests who are connecting into our programming, but also for connected conference rooms and hybrid spaces where you have maybe NDI-enabled cameras on site that you want to be able to bring and show to a remote Zoom audience, or you have content that is living in Zoom that you want to put out to the NDI network, or even for the creator economy at large, where people want to be able to tell their stories with friends and experts from around the world and integrate them into their programming through NDI. So we make a variety of tools, both integrated into our core Zoom products, as well as into our liminal app production tool suite, which is part of our Zoom events platform, heavily NDI enabled there, from putting audiences up on LED walls to getting the isolated individual video and audio streams from remote Zoom calls. We're super excited to join the NDI Advisory Board this year, and really, really excited about the direction that NDI is going, and excited to be on this journey. And thanks again for having me.
Great. Jeff, tell us a little about yourself.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Moore. I'm the Executive Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer at Ross Video. It's my 29th year at the company. Ross creates technology and provides services for live video and audio production and experiential technologies. So we've got a full suite of tech, everything from robotic studio cameras to cable cameras for sports events, production switchers, graphic systems, core routing and signal processing infrastructure, audio mixing, ingest and playout, replay, media asset management, basically a full end-to-end suite of solutions. And we sell to a broad range of industries. So everything from broadcast to sports, entertainment, Fortune 500 companies are big customers of ours, governments, houses of worship, and educators. So broad swath of industries, broad swath of technologies. We were the first company to come out and fully embrace NDI, the NDI Advanced SDK, across our entire portfolio. So we've got broad-based support. We see NDI as very beneficial and complementing a lot of the workflows we get involved in have multiple signal transport formats. It's not just one or another. It's a combination that really create the value for the customer. And so NDI fits in very nicely alongside signal transports like SDI, for example, or SMPTE 2110 or SRT in certain instances. and provides a lot of value to our clients that way. So that's my intro.
Awesome. So thank you guys for coming on the advisory board. I think one of the things that I love about the advisory board is it's the NDI guys listening to their customers. You are all customers as partners selling products that have it. You're listening to your end customers, be it a broadcast studio or a Fortune 500 and AV, or you put together some amazing event. And I just think it's incredible because this is our 6th NDI November. So back in 2020, we had Dr. Cross on as our keynote speaker. And one of the things he really brought to light was how the adoption of video streaming and even NDI had jumped 5 years ahead because video streaming was what let the world communicate, with each other and all that. So here we are 5 years later, and I want to ask each of you, has the technology caught up, and how will NDI video streaming production over the next 5 years go? So, Jeff, you started. I know you're in the broadcast realm, so let's start with you this time on that one.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I guess, from a broadcast perspective, at least, NDI has been kind of making its way in increments, I would say, alongside these other signal transports. It's easy to deploy. You don't need exotic networking, that sort of thing. So if I want to get a feed from point A to point B, I've got a gigabit Ethernet network. NDI gets me there in a nice way for professional use. So was already in place, but we've seen it accelerate. One of the additional things I would say is that not just remote working, but also cloud adoption. And NDI plays a very strong role in cloud production. You see, the majority of cloud productions these days, NDI is the intra-cloud format, being able to move video between different types of tech in a cloud environment. So, that's kind of one of the big things that we've seen drive the adoption. And it also then informs the capabilities that can be done on premise, right? So if you're using it in the cloud, then on premise obviously they play off one another.
Cool. Thank you so much. Andy, you're from the other perspective with Zoom. You guys know how the world exploded with Zoom meetings and things like that. And now here we are where the technologies move forward. You talked about, when you introduced yourself, how Zoom's leaning in to NDI. But I really think it's that partnership of NDI and Zoom that's gotten you to here. And how are you going to go to 5 years from now? What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of interesting trends right now where NDI is playing a critical role. I completely agree with Jeff that NDI plays a huge role in the connected media cloud. We're seeing that in multiple different areas right now where media transport in like an AWS environment, for example, NDI is really the backbone of a lot of those systems. For us, some of our more typical builds, if you think about a hybrid conference room, there are buildings that are being put together right now that are totally IP enabled, and they've been able to be designed for the first time with IP video from the ground up as part of the story. Whereas a lot of, I think, the past couple of years have been about the, co-deploy or how to layer on IP video technology on top of existing infrastructure. We're now seeing the development of spaces that are NDI first, if you will, that have been built from the ground up to take advantage of a lot of those affordances. Some of the things that really resonate for our customers right now is, routing and management control through infrastructure that they already have to deploy to have those rooms be connected for their IT backbone. So we're seeing more of a partnership now between the media producers and the IT teams. I think NDI really facilitates a lot of that collaboration. And I think those are going to be some of the fundamental pillars that power the next 5 years. For us, we're really, really excited about the ability to weave in remote video and then bring it in on site, proliferate it through the organization, and then send it back out. And NDI has been a huge facilitator of that. And as an industry, I think as we see, more and more devices coming online, more software products coming online, more adoption of some of the advanced NDI capabilities and NDI's own development of additional tooling that makes it useful in more kind of vertical deployments, I think we're going to see a lot coming down the line. We're very excited about it on our end.
Me too. Now, Fintan, you live in the world of making both these worlds collide and work together, ProAV, Pro Video, broadcast. So, you've got your hands in it, actually making it work. And I would like to say that I think a lot of this doesn't work without NDI, but I'll let you, as someone who actually has to make things work for your customers, elaborate a little bit more on that, where you see NDI being the glue that lets you take, your customers to even bigger heights, bigger productions 5 years down the road.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we got our hands in it. I guess taking that analogy a bit further, if we were a vet, we'd have both hands deep up in it. That's where we are with NDI, right? And the good thing is the calf is coming to us. We're not having to pull it too hard. It's coming, right? But the broadcast projects usage and sales cycle is quite different from the ProAV usage sales cycle and messaging. So they are quite different. I think in broadcast, and this is in an Asia perspective, NDI at this moment is being seen as one of the choices that you make when you want to move on from SDI into an IP environment. And the lion's share of broadcasters and broadcast facilities in Asia are still baseband based, right? So a lot of video coax, a lot of big video switchers, and all that sort of stuff. So, but nearly all of that is aging. So there's a huge refresh cycle coming up, and that's when they're going to say, okay, do we do 2110? And this is what's in their head. It's and Jeff was very correct. I mean, I don't see the future as one or the other. I think it's quite a blended future. So clearly 2110 has been well got and well adopted in North America and Europe. It's zero compression. It's the gold standard and the whole lot. But I have a metric, and this is not just a metric for broadcast or AV, or it's my metric for trying to figure out if technologies are going to be super successful when they're early stage. And it's a very simple one, and you have to pass two green-red tests. And is the technology better than the technology it replaces? And with NDI, there's just so many. That's a very clear, easy thing to show that is yes, absolutely. Yeah. It is far and above on both sides of the fence. Second one is a bit more subtle. Is the technology cheaper than the technology it replaces, right? And given the headwinds that broadcasters have today with their ad revenue going to social media and their subscriber revenue going to the OTT operators, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and everything else. So they're looking to be cost effective as well, right? And the early adopters who went into cloud fully got a bit burnt as well, because I guess egress costs and stuff came up and bit them in the butt a little bit more than they expected. Yeah. So so they're all a bit cautious now. And the reality is, I think you can do both. And I think for NDI to be successful in the future in the broadcast side, it needs to show that it's very comfortable collaborating and coexisting in a 2110 world, in an SDI world. That it doesn't just try and be a replace all for everything, because I think broadcasters are looking not to be locked in; they're looking for optionality, and I think over time the quality and the price will drive that NDI. So. I think you'll see down the road when deployments are out, people will feel more comfortable with it. That's on the broadcast side. The AV side, and by the AV side, I'm talking about this very kind of fast-growing video production, TV-like space that's going on now. So a lot of what we're doing is building things that look like television studios, but they're not for broadcast. They're for streaming. They're for professional video content. But there's a huge growing market for this. It's 10, 15 years ago, the corporations that wanted professional video production, they probably wanted it for a TV advert, and they made a Toyota advert and they ran it for 6 months or 5 months. Here's the new Corolla, go and buy it, la, la, la. Now, these companies have to produce new content for delivery to social media. It's demanded, whether it be their own social media or other social media, or various apps and various streaming applications. But that video shelf life has a week at best, and a month. It's already costed. We got to keep producing more of it. So we're weirdly building these look like a TV studio, but it's for a corporation, so they can create their own corporate messaging in-house. And that's a push and pull. The pull here is all of the social media, and the majority of social media apps are now requiring video. Even your LinkedIn that started as a text-based or a picture-based, video every day. There's video native apps. Obviously, we got TikTok now, YouTube for a long time, but other apps that were text, even your Twitter now, you're getting video. So everything's demanding video. So the only way these companies can keep up is to be able to produce their own video. So as the kind of what used to be 20 years ago, IBM and Microsoft all had their own broadcast, full on broadcast. They bought the heavy iron from Ross and built full on broadcast studios. But as that threshold comes down from the Fortune 100 to the Fortune 500 to the Fortune 1000, then into the mainstream mid-sized corporations actually want in-house video production, and it's just going to be your local realty agency or whatever else it is, because they want to stream messaging about their product. Also, then NDI has come in and allowed really high quality production to be done in a studio at a fraction of the price, and moreover on standard IT, very simple. So these companies don't need broadcast engineers. So that this part of NDI is explosive. The NDI systems are easy to set up, easy to use, easy to manage. Their cost is low, and the demand is increasing logarithmically at the moment.
That was a great answer. The term I like to use, you have your two traffic lights. I think the one that really applies to NDI more than anything is affordable scalability. And it's very odd because, as we all know in the video industry, typically what we get is something that starts at the high end of the market and then eventually gets adopted enough. Someone figures out how to cost reduce it or make 3 devices into 1 device, and it comes down. NDI really started at the middle, proof of concept over the last 5 years, and now it's actually, through affordable scalability, it's moving up into the broadcast realm. And I don't think anyone's a better example of that than what you guys are doing at Ross, Jeff. So do you want to pick up where Fintan left off a little bit on how NDI has grown into a tool for broadcast, which is not the norm in our industry?
Yeah. I would say, by the way, I'd maybe take a little bit of, I'd argue a little bit with Fintan on the differentiation between the industries, because I think what's actually happening is customers across the board aren't really considering themselves broadcasters or Fortune 500 company. They don't categorize themselves the way we might. They're really just looking for solutions, the best solution that does the job for them at the right price, and that varies based on the client and what they're trying to achieve. And one of the things that the benefits, at least for me, of being on the advisory board is to help steer some of the some of the capabilities of NDI in a direction that is useful for us in those workflows, and be able to complete the workflows. And things like, for example, the latest version of NDI, version 6.2, makes receivers discoverable. Yep. We didn't have that before. So if we wanted to plug and play into a broadcast, I use air quotes when I say broadcast, because a standard kind of routing workflow where we want to be able to push a button and route a signal from point A to point B, well, NDI wasn't as easy to do that with as, for example, SIP 2110. SIP 2110 uses this technology called NMOS. Senders and receivers are both discoverable. We had to hard code the NDI stuff to make that work. Now with 6.2, which is just out, we'll have the ability to integrate more directly with that, make it automatically discoverable, easy to integrate into those kinds of workflows. So those are sorts of things that I think as NDI moves forward, and I think this is fantastic. We've got lots of different viewpoints on this on the on the committee as well to help steer the right direction here, so that we get good workflows regardless of the market application. Certainly, Andy coming in with the perspective of Zoom is really beneficial, I think, as well, for remote workflows, low latency, be able to bring those into NDI workflows and connect with those. So, I guess.
I'm sorry.
I guess from my perspective, being able to scale and build facilities at scale that meet expectations and fill in those gaps. That's been kind of the focus from my point of view on the advisory board, to bring those more on an equal footing with SDI and with 2110.
Awesome answer. When you think about it, there are podcasts and influencers who get far more views for their shows than anything on broadcast television, short of, live sport events like the Super Bowl and big stuff like that. And then you have sports that have really come up through what I would call OTT live streaming, that through that became more major sports that networks and other people picked up. So it's all kind of blurring together. But the one thread that I think all of this has had that's interesting is Zoom and remote bringing people in, kind of like what we're doing with today's show. And that is that Zoom really unlocked this ability, I think, to mix and match live production with remote production, to bring influencers and podcasters on a almost leveled playing field when you think about it. So, Andy, you've been driving the evolution of remote contribution tools like Zoom ISO. From your vantage point, what's the next major step in integrating platforms like Zoom into professional live production workflows? I think today's show is a great example of where we are. Where can we go the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, one of the things that I think, Zoom ISO brings up for us is the power of software-defined applications and workflows, where NDI, I think, really excels. The opportunity for somebody independently to be able to download that SDK and immediately have, a video workflow that's compatible with so many different devices and other software applications was a big part of the reason that Zoom ISO was successful. That's why NDI was the first protocol that Zoom ISO directly supported. It was because it was accessible from a developer point of view, and it got us into that whole ecosystem as we saw it leveling up in the creator economy, leveling up in the enterprise space, and continuing to get, broader adoption in broadcast. So it was a natural fit for us to build in NDI into the remote contribution workflows that we were building around Zoom ISO. Now, what we're seeing on the Zoom side, when we define the broadcast market, we sort of draw this triangle with, 3 different segments to it. We have, linear TV providers at the top, traditional broadcast, what you would think of when you say the word broadcasting. Then we have enterprise media, which is absolutely proliferating. To Fintan's point, there's so many new spaces coming online that are designed to feed the need of all of this media that these enterprise companies are now responsible for across social, internal comms, et cetera. And then the creator economy, to your point, so many eyeballs. You look at where the viewers are, and it's definitely seeing a migration there. So what we're trying to do is build tooling that is adaptable across all 3 segments of this broadcast market as it evolves. And what I think is so exciting about working with NDI is that it has that verticality in all of those individual spaces. For me, a big part of it is the software defined, but as we start looking at, some of our hero spaces that we talk about for hybrid collaboration, it's hybrid auditoriums, right? Maybe it's a divisible space where routing is a big concern, and it needs to be super, super simple. You can't be calling IT for every configuration change that takes place between meetings, but they all need to have that high quality experience. It needs to be able to come together for the all hands and, be accessible throughout the organization and its IT infrastructure. And then you look at the corporate broadcast studio, time to get your message out to the rest of the organization, time to do a remote hit on a TV station. Those spaces are becoming super important. And we're seeing lots of NDI cameras in those spaces, lots of workflows that involve displays now. We're super excited as well about the receiver discoverability, because it makes that adaptability layer a lot more tenable in those spaces. And then we also see education being a huge area for us right now. There's so much flexibility that you get when you're working with NDI technology because of all the affordances that it offers. So, the classroom of the future, a lot of these spaces that have, remote learning built into the fabric, that's an area that's been very, very important to Zoom. And that's an area that we're seeing a lot of customers adopting NDI-based workflows right now. So, if I look into my crystal ball, I think that as NDI continues to support verticality and is a friend to all, and continues to encourage additional development on the software side and additional partnerships on the hardware side, we'll continue to see growth in all of these areas.
Cool. So, Fintan, you've overseen some of the biggest NDI and IP studio builds throughout Southeast Asia. What trends from the projects that you're seeing now do you think are relevant to the global industry, especially given what Jeff and Andy just, talked about on their views? Like, pick up on that and what you're seeing.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we've done NDI with Ross in broadcast studios here in Southeast Asia. One of our big kind of projects when we started getting into NDI was with Zoom, like this on a TriCaster for a Singapore government fintech expo during lockdowns here during COVID. Which went off very successfully, and precisely that, the ability to pull ISOs out of the Zoom and switch them as individual feeds and bring them onto video walls in the back. So, where it goes in the future, again, two worlds. In the broadcast world, I think two worlds with different needs and the same answer to both. I think how the manufacturer ecosystem picks up will affect us, because the more devices, the more NDI devices, the more NDI-enabled devices, the bigger a palette, the bigger a set of tools we have to architect and design solutions. And to be specific on this, and this is one I've been talking about for quite a while now. Whilst there are many NDI cameras out there, handy cams with NDI HX, lots of NDI HX. Lots of NDI native PTZs, but still no full production camera native NDI. There is one Panasonic studio camera, but the NDI is like a feed off it. It's not the main feed off it. There's no control. It doesn't use control interface. We were excited when we saw it. We're still happy with it, but so I think what'll happen is, taking that camera example a bit further. So one of the camera manufacturers brings out a full NDI camera, the way we have NDI in the PTZs with the control. So you don't need CCU. So you've just got the nice IT cable connected to it. All this sort of stuff. That'll change the game on these kind of lower cost production studios using NDI, because then you've got NDI literally from the camera all the way through. So if you've got ecosystem bits missing, you can't do it. That also happens in the ProAV world. Where the majority of your office automation and Andy was talking about education across the ProAV world, whether it be in the hospitality business, a whole lot. There's a couple of major proprietary control guys, that have their ecosystems. It's Crestron, it's Extron, it's QSys, and these guys, right? And they live on the ecosystem of devices that they control. So as NDI can do more things, then it will be deployed more. For example, every retail mall is full of LED screens. And the majority of those are still fed today with HDMI, and most of those HDMIs aren't long enough, so they have to have fiber extenders and all that. So then you get into this idea. This is where we have to be careful with NDI too, because then people start getting NDI confused with things like IPMX or GPMI, which is general purpose multimedia interface. So these type of things. So you don't want to get into that per se, because it's not just about replacing the HDMI. It's not just about replacing the coax or the SDI. It's that whole environment. So how quickly this goes and how it goes in the future, and a lot is dependent on the manufacturers and the products that come in and what people can do. And then a strange analogy to this is an iPhone. I think that when the iPhone came out 2008, right? So there was no touchscreens before that. Everything had buttons, right? So the big thing wasn't that it was touchscreen. The big thing is that the apps that ran on it could have different buttons for different apps. So you had much more freedom, right? So the absolute success of touchscreen phones was based on not locking down the app developers to what the phone was when it was made, and therefore the touchscreens just took over and very quickly wiped out every phone with buttons on it. NDI is like that too. NDI is like the touchscreen app. It is like the touchscreen, whereas the manufacturers of the equipment are now the app guys, right? So if they can make more things that use NDI, we can build them into more complicated systems. If you look behind me there, in my background, I've got the Marina Bay Sands. So, for example, that hotel was built here about 15 years ago for about $10 billion. They're building another tower, a fourth tower at the moment, right, which is going to cost about $11 billion. And there's going to be a bunch of AV, a bunch of video on that, a bunch of LED screens. There's an auditorium going into it with a bunch of speakers. And how much of that can be NDI will depend on how many manufacturers are making things that you can build into it.
Brilliant analogy. I really loved it. Jeff, you're a manufacturer. You're a manufacturer that I know does LED walls now. You're not really in the camera side of it, but I'm sure you have lots of discussions with the studio camera folks. Why do you think they're hesitant to put NDI in the way PTZs and PTZs have?
I'd say it's a great question. I'm not sure I have a clear answer to that. Even though we integrate with the studio camera guys, I think they'll get to it. To be honest, it sometimes takes a while when you're developing hardware-centric products to bring out new I/O flavors. How much it matters is another question, because we do have converters available to take those cameras and bring them into NDI workflows. I do, by the way, totally agree with what Fintan just said about the breadth of portfolio that supports NDI that's available out there to build ecosystems. That's been filling in pretty rapidly, actually, but there's still gaps, and we've thrown our weight behind it. One of the things I wanted to kind of segue into a little bit was audio and talk about that.
Great.
We haven't, even though audio is probably more important than video, because you'll change the channel, or you could something like this could be intolerable if the audio is bad, but you can live with bad video. So one of the acquisitions we made this past year, just actually in September, was a company called Llama. And Llama is a software-based audio mixing company. They have connection software. One of the things they had developed was a virtual sound card for NDI to be able to bring computer-based audio in and out of NDI. Essentially, make those connections, whether it's on Windows, Mac, or Linux environments. So that is interesting. And in the discussions with the Llama team, we kind of got to know them through mutual customers that were using their applications, and primarily in cloud applications. And one of the things they told us was, we really like NDI as an audio transport format. Oh, that's interesting. And by the way, they said, did you know we can ship 256 channels of audio over NDI and use it? You don't have to have video alongside the audio in NDI. So there's things like that are people don't necessarily think of in these sorts of applications. But and this is sort of directionally where NDI can go. They can expand their realm into more broad-based applications. Things like carry, tally, and control are examples of that as well, right? So as that, that analogy that Fintan used was, we've got the, platform. As the platform gets built out, we can do more things with the platform and get onto it. The software, and this is a big part of the I think what we haven't really stated out loud, maybe Andy has a little bit, but software-based solutions are what drives this, right? Being able to, and NDI allows us to get in and out of compute platforms very effectively and take advantage of software, whether it's for video switching, mixing, audio mixing, graphics, all of those sorts of things can be done more easily in software, because we don't necessarily have to have an I/O board, a frame buffer card, and specialized hardware to be able to do that. So that is one of the big things that it unlocks, and I think that the camera guys will get there.
Yeah, and in some of the discussions of the previous shows we've done, we've talked about, NDI audio, not just llama, but things like, can we get an NDI microphone? Can we get NDI speakers? From my point of view, in the video wall side, we get tied into these expensive processors that cost $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. Why can't NDI transport all that to the video wall and do it that way? Can we set up, can the whole hotel entertainment industry be revolutionized by having TVs that get NDI so there are no more boxes and other things going between where we are? So the world of NDI is the make it easy button for the collision of ProAV, Pro Video, and video in general is amazing. And I think it's also been, your iPhone thing is really right. Apple has talked about democratizing things, and I think NDI kind of democratized video as just a platform that more people could make easily and share. Let's wrap this up. I love this. We've gone way over the 30 minutes, which is fine because our chat room loves this stuff. It's been a great conversation, all that. But I first want to see, do we have any questions for the guys? You answered them over the course of your discussions, so that was great. So let's talk about the thing you, from not just your company, but you're all invested in this technology as people. From a personal point of view, with your corporate hat, with your personal hat, what's the thing you're most excited about when you look at the future of NDI and IP-based production? We'll start with you, Andy.
Well, I think you had Elias on your show recently.
Yep.
And I really, I think of him when I think about the exciting things that are to come, because I to that point about software defined, here you have somebody who, has the context of the live streaming business, has the ability to create tools that solve problems that he himself encounters out in the field, and can use NDI's developer tooling to solve those problems. So as I look at, what I'm most excited about, I think it is going to be, people who are subject matter experts on specific workflows or specific challenges, leveraging the totality of what NDI offers. Yes, the video, absolutely the audio, to Jeff's point. Metadata and control, also a big one that we care about at Zoom, for how we integrate into the rest of the peripherals in the space, because we often have the control surface, whether that's a tablet, Zoom Room controller or something along those lines. How you integrate all three of those things will be exciting. And I think that's going to play a big role in the applications that are to come, because again, I think the fact that NDI can reach directly into the software application layer lets us get in and out of compute, to Jeff's point, but it also just opens us up to people being able to, solve their own problems using NDI and create tooling that will benefit all of us. That's what Zoom ISO was in the beginning. It was just me trying to be able to add remote contribution to my production company's shows. And it's turned into, this entire platform on Zoom for broadcast that brings us into all sorts of different places now. So I think that we're going to see a lot of that to come as people can leverage NDI as a tool to solve problems that will benefit all of us.
Awesome. Fintan, your thoughts?
I was delighted to hear Jeff when he said the relative importance of audio, maybe even being more important than video. That makes me feel very good, because we just bought a audio system integration company in May of this year here in Singapore, and added it into the Ideal Group. It was a company called CLS Control Logic Systems. So they were a 30-year-old audio company, audio integrator, and that gets us deep into complex audio, networked audio, directional speakers in audio. And amazingly, we're actually working on NDI audio as well, because we would, right? So, you're on a technology that, one, for me, right, from an Ideal perspective, our broadcast customers like it, actually love it. Our corporate customers love it. This is one of the probably the most unspoken thing about NDI is the lack of scars on your back you get as a system integrator by deploying it, right? and that's coming from someone who's running out of backspace for new scars. So we do actually, and we should have a metric for happy customers, and NDI will be a top scorer there. But it's not just that you have happy customers. You've got a one technology that does our broadcast, that does our AV, and it is very future looking. And you were talking about IP standards. Like there's even guys, Korean guys, and a few other companies now doing the IP lighting over NDI, right? So DMX lighting, but over NDI. And people say, well, why would you want all that? And I go, well, if you're having a simple studio, and you don't need 50 channel complex Dante audio complicated stuff. So if your audio can stay in NDI without going out, because we find that when you branch out your audio out into Dante and then bring it back in, then you're trying to adjust the lip sync. So just keep it in NDI. So then when your microphones are in NDI and your audio is in NDI and your lighting is NDI, the future TriCaster is just, that thing is just got bull on fire. It'll do everything. Like, I mean, that thing, we just have to put brighter LED lights in it to make it look like the freaking spacecraft that is going to be in the future, because it really will do everything. So that, people don't normally get this excited about their technologies. I am, our team are, and that's because there's a lot more that it can do, and it's going the right way. And the market that it's going the right way in is a growing market as well, right? So from the point of view of trying to get young people into this industry, which is a key thing, it's very easy, and I think it's easier, and I think it's pretty good for young people to get into an industry that has growth potential. And that's a pretty good message as well, right?
I love it. Jeff, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on that, but I love some of the things we talked about: audio, metadata, lighting. Take it away, Jeff.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to be on this journey with NDI. Ross is excited. One of the things I would like to point out to the audience is that Ross products are NDI enabled. I'm not sure that's all that well known out there. So if there's one thing I could, one takeaway is if a few more people know that we have products, whether it's our graphic system, expression, Carbonite Code, we have a production switcher audio mixer combination, also has graphics built in. It's NDI in and out. Graphite Cloud Production Center is our all-in-one production center for the cloud, uses NDI as its I/O. Media I/O, which is our ingest and playout system. Llama Audio, I mentioned. So we have a full suite of solutions available for NDI. So if you're thinking NDI, think Ross. We have the tech. We have a lot of tech available out there that is bringing those feature sets, those high-end feature sets, into the NDI world. And I think that it's still actually pretty early days for, at least for NDI in that realm. So I'm excited to see where that goes, and I'm curious as well about kind of what customers are going to do with it. Because this is one of the things that we discovered with NDI as we started enabling our products. It's like, oh, you're doing that. Well, that's cool. Maybe that's something that we should follow and add to. And so that's the probably the most exciting thing about NDI is the kinds of stuff that we're going to encounter that maybe we didn't anticipate. And then we can perhaps learn from that and harness it in different ways in our portfolio of products, and be able to put even better solutions together for clients so they can achieve their goals of communicating, delighting their audiences, connecting with their congregations at their house of worship, that kind of thing. That's why I think all of us are here, is to support the creative people, the communicators, to make their lives easier, better, to give them some tools to do things that, elevate their game. So,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I hope being on today's show helps let people learn a lot about how Ross is all NDI as well. And I appreciate that. And I'd also, like to add that what I'm most excited about is the fact that NDI is a user partner-led technology. We have end customers who've been using NDI and asking for features. We've got you guys on this advisory board now, which I think is a huge step forward. And NDI is an independent company, so it can work with any people in the industry who want to show their, want to take things to the next level. We see that, NDI is we think it got to a great point. Now we think it's a second liftoff point, because we think it's going to become a lot more than video, what you guys pointed out. I look at being able to do spatial audio with NDI. Why not figure out which speakers should be where in a room? Lighting, of course. If I'm producing the show, why shouldn't the lighting follow the mix? It knows when I'm going to if I'm doing a musical event, it's a band, and it knows the guy's going to do his solo. Why not automatically have the spot go when I go to that shot? The spot knows to go on him and how to do it. The fact that you guys are talking about audio, I think is, I kind of laugh a little bit because the first time I spoke to Dr. Cross after it was announced at IBC, my number one request was, and when do we get the NDI audio mixing board that's, NDI IP native? And he kind of laughed and he kind of said, well, when enough people ask for it and some smart guy comes up with a way to do it. Jeff, you had something to add?
We have that.
Yeah, you do now. I know. The Llama guys, right? Another brilliant acquisition by Ross, who, by the way, got to give you guys the biggest compliments in the world, because it's one thing to buy companies. It's another thing to integrate them and have them become seamless within your technology, your whole stack. So kudos to you guys. Kudos to everyone for being on the show. Whenever I do a show, I like to finish by giving everyone a last word. We've gone over time, so I'm going to give everyone a last word, but try to keep it to like 30 seconds or a minute. And I'm going to say, Andy, why don't you start?
Awesome. Well, thanks again for the opportunity to be here today. I'll just end by saying that, yes, I think the advisory board is a great step forward for NDI. We're really all excited to participate and bring our unique perspectives on it, but also to advocate for our customer base that we interact with back to the NDI team. So I think, seeing things like NDI November produce, that's an olive branch out to the industry. The advisory board is another one, and we're really excited to keep working together to drive things forward.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the show. Fintan?
Just to say thanks to all of the manufacturers, Ross included, especially on Zoom. We've worked with both of you on projects who have helped us on many NDI projects. And to any people who are either inquiring or interested or have something to offer or say about NDI development or the way NDI is going, or want to know more about how NDI is going in Asia, do reach out to Ideal. We've got lots of offices across Asia. We've been working on projects in Asia for 36 years now. A lot of experience, and between both broadcast and ProAV, we're putting a large amount of NDI out there and learning a lot. But we can always learn more or help you learn more. So do feel.
And I just to say, Finn, thank you for you guys. You guys put a lot of user stories, success stories out there, be they white papers, videos, whatever. That's great. It helps us all grow, everyone, and everyone learns from each other.
I think I think a lot of people. This is crucial, and a lot of people in Asia, for example, the English is a second language, and if you give them a technical document or a technical spec, it doesn't, unless you translate it. Sometimes the nuances are lost, and this is why we push to try and get our customers to support us on case studies. Because it's much easier to go, I've got a problem like that problem, or they've solved a problem like my problem. And the synapse is much quicker. The synaptics kind of go, yeah, okay, NDI can do that. Didn't know it, kind of cool. And it's case studies. It's just an easier way to learn the technology for a lot of people, I think.
Agreed. NDI November is no better proof of that concept. So, Jeff, last words, last thoughts?
Ross makes NDI enabled tools. We can provide creative tools, high-level stuff to, make your workflows sing. Let's say I've been really enjoyed being on the advisory board. I think we've have several meetings a year. There's been some good give and take, lots of interesting insights from across the spectrum of people involved. So I think, if you're involved in the NDI ecosystem, that feel free to connect with any one of us and provide your input so that we can bring it up at future board meetings. I think we got another one coming up in a couple of weeks, actually. And thank you very much to you, Gary, for hosting us today.
Thank you. It was a great show, guys. Thank you so much. We went way over, and I don't care because I thought the content was brilliant. You guys gave some great insight into the industry and where it's going. So I'm going to take off now, and Jim's going to pick it up. I think we've got to announce some prizes, some other wrap-up stuff. But guys, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll see you next year. Maybe we'll get everyone on the advisory board on NDI November, next year's roundtable. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.